Hello, everybody. This is my new YouTube channel. We're going to be doing scary stories, alien stories. I mainly like space stuff. But without ado, here we go. This story is called Alan the Alien. So, this story is a real story about an old friend of mine, Alan. I know. In a story like this, people typically write, "This is based on true events," or "I'm telling you, this is real." Well, this story is real and is really based on my experience, and I want to share that experience with you today. Of course, in order to really get the scope of the story, I have to explain Alan, the alien. When I was about 12 and in middle school, my parents divorced. At the time, I didn't know why. What I did know was I wasn't staying with my dad for reasons I would rather not explain here. I feel I need to know. It wasn't for any disturbing reasons or anything. I just didn't like him and the way he was around me and my siblings. Anyway, I moved with my mother to another town, just me and her. It turns out she had intended on leaving my dad years before their actual divorce. She had been seeing someone else, and now that the divorce is complete, we were living with the person she was seeing. All that aside, I was new to this town. I had to make friends. Mind you, this was the 90s. Cell phones were in their infancy, and the only way to keep in touch with friends was through old phones, as long distance charges were a thing back then. That wasn't happening unless I wanted to pay for the phone bill, so new friends it was. And new friends I made, not many, and not many that cared beyond saying that they're friends with a new guy. I don't believe people truly wanted to be friends anyway. I am an introvert by nature, so I tended to stick to myself. This is going nowhere. Let me get closer to the point. I met a guy, Alan, in one of my classes. I think it was English class. He was an oddball, kind of an introvert, like me. I think we instantly got along because we were interested in very similar things. Gaming, metal, D&D, magic, the gathering, etc. He also had a genetic defect where his hair would not grow properly, so he kept his head bald. Got picked on a lot for that in school, too. Kids are shitty, almost humans. He introduced himself as Alan, the alien. This was about when I learned how to properly say alien. I used to say,
Alien.
"It's,"
Alien.
he told me. Now I know. I didn't understand the fascination with calling himself an alien, but he stuck with it all throughout our childhood. He even had a little ID card with his face and that he was a citizen of Mars. Made for great entertainment, at least. Growing up with Alan was unique. I spent a lot of time at his house to get away from my depressing home life. We did pretty much everything. We shot BB guns, we fished the river in his backyard, we walked out on the river in the winter when it was frozen solid, we even smoked weed. We did a lot of stuff. Anyway, I never truly got the sense that there was anything otherworldly about him, so I didn't really pay attention to the alien stuff. I feel more of his interests were in spirits and angels and demons. He left the Grim Reaper. He was the edgelord of our group. He was also the more outgoing one between the two of us. He always had fantastic stories about how he was in a gang with a bunch of kids south of where we lived, or how we saved some other people's life. Many stories. He had a lot of ghost stories, he told me. I didn't believe all of them. I've had my experiences, like the time I saw a white figure in my door. I was at home trying to sleep, listening to Alien Ant Farm with the loud AC in my window. I was half out of it. When I saw a white figure in my doorway, I couldn't make out any features or a true form, just an outline of what I believed was a guy looking into my room, a ghost guy. I would have passed it off as part of the night terrors I used to endure when I was a little kid, until my mom told me the next day she was visited by her grandfather in her sleep. It could just be a coincidence. So I told him about that one, and he wanted to do a Ouija session. I think that's what you call it. Despite what happened, I still don't buy the whole Ouija bit. It's someone else pushing the damn thing. I don't know what it's called. And I would not be surprised if he had, in fact, faked a lot of sessions we had. That doesn't excuse what had happened one night. Alan and I decided to do another session, for fun. He got the board out, the candles, and incense. We had a long session. This one was definitely something different. While the thing was moving, I took my hands off of it and it was still moving. Then he took his hands off and it stopped. I wasn't buying that he wasn't pushing it. That was until we started doing the whole thing again and my hands became icy cold. It definitely seemed very different. I don't even remember who we were talking to because, again, I didn't buy any of it. But my hands were so cold and the room was warm, especially with the lit candles right next to us. Weird, but I could have been creeped out a bit even if I didn't buy it. That was when he took his hands off this time. Something was holding it down and pushing it. Only my hands were on it. It spooked me and I was done with it. About a week goes by and I started getting weird feelings around Alan, like maybe he was an alien after all. Just kidding. I couldn't shake it, but even when I told him, he told me something along the lines of,
I'm an alien, dumbass.
terms of endearment, I assure you. It was around a few days later when we were kicking it outside his house by a fire he built late at night when I caught something silver flashing behind Alan's head. I couldn't make it out, but something was definitely there. I kept looking at it, was hovering behind his head. Something was just out of sight, fuzzy, gloomy, black and gray, and then I didn't see it anymore. Until about another few days later when we had a party with friends. He told them all about how he was in a gang or some silly story like that, but I wasn't focused on that. I was focused on the less obfuscated thing hovering behind his head. It looked like hair attached to something in the shape of a face. I couldn't make out the face or what seemed like a face, but I was spooked. I didn't participate in the party anymore after that. The next day at my school, I made it a mission to tell Alan what I had seen. I know he would have believed it too. It would probably make his day to have a real crazy story to tell people, but when I approached him, I remember seeing a pale face, eyes gone so there's nothing but a dark abyss where his eyes were, mouth open wide in a tremendous screaming look, and that's when I started shrieking. The shriek was so loud I covered my ears, but I could still hear the shrieking as if my ears were not covered at all. It was loud. I ran away, but not before getting one more look at this thing. The face was so creepy and pale and dead. The eyes were empty sockets. The nose was there, but it looked like it was decayed. Its mouth was so abnormally large and wide open. The hair was pale, but like a darker pale. It had a face that seemed like it was focused and angry. All of that was creepy. Even the scream was disturbing. But nothing terrifies me more than the fact that no matter what he did, how he moved around, where he looked, this thing was fixated in its floating point staring directly at the back of his head. It was always right at that spot behind his head, and it moved with him so he would never see it. I stayed away from Alan for a bit, that and I moved back to my dad's to finish school in my hometown. Big mistake on my part, but I had my reasons, selfish reasons. Nothing to do with the thing that happened with Alan. In fact, years later, we moved into a friend's place together. We were roommates at that point. I had removed the memories of that face, just pushed the memories completely out of my mind. We spent a lot of time together gaming and smoking and having parties. You know that feeling you get when you realize they were good times and you wish you would have known those were good times to be the good times so you can really enjoy them? We planned the party like we always do, except this time I would be joining them for a bit of puff puff pass. Everyone was hitting the pipe, telling jokes, snacking, and having a drink or two of Blue UV. God, I do not miss that drink. We drank it almost every night. It was my turn to hit the pipe. I hit it hard and cleared the carb. I was clearing it, the scream came back, and I saw the same face again behind Alan. This time it was attached to a body. Long thin legs and arms, a short torso. It looked so dead, and yet its skin had more color to it. Maybe it was the lighting. Either way, I flipped back out of my chair and ran outside. I was in panic mode and my brain was unfocused because of the pot. Some of my friends followed me outside to make sure I was okay. Anyway, after that, I spent less and less time with Alan, the alien, and moved away. Haven't seen the thing since, but that also means I haven't spoken to Alan much since either. It would have been hard to explain why. It just followed behind his head and he would have never seen it. So why would he believe me? I was the only one who saw this thing as well. And it was when I was having a hard trip on some probably laced weed. Although, anytime before that night, I was perfectly sober, so I don't buy that it was because of drugs or alcohol. What was that thing? I want to say it was a banshee because of the shrieking, but at the party it seemed more alive with legs and arms. I don't know enough about the extreme paranormal side of things, and because of those night terrors that sometimes I still experience, I try to avoid the extreme stuff. I stick to the chilling stuff. What do you think it was? I would draw something, but I'm rusty at making stick figures. Just imagine like you see in the movies, but more alive than dead, and with weird torso and limbs. Anyway, I hope he's okay. As far as I know, he's pretty alone. Not a lot of people talk to him much anymore, likely because he's an introvert and doesn't get out as much. If you're reading this, Alan, you know who this is. DM me here on Reddit. I don't have a Facebook anymore and I don't have your number. I think I still have your Steam account, so if you log into Steam at any point, hit me up.